ADC error or a pilot error? Was captain suicidal? Does lowering a gear cause crash in populated area? Why pilots said they are comfortable? Is there any audio missing? What is the ding ding sound in cockpit? I'll tell you about a new theory emerging out. Why there are no runway cameras or CCTV? Did pilot forget to lower the gear? Was it possible for him to land on a reciprocal runway or a runway 07 right?
Okay, so the first question is asked by Fasi Rahman that where is cockpit voice recording? Till now, why they did not released in media and website? Well, CVR and FDR, it requires time to decode, and as per the new report from Airbus, it is clear that they have decoded and have all the data regarding the accident. But the final report requires time. It involves all the detailed information plus the psychological analysis of pilot also come into play. The investigation involves all the series of factors that leads up to a crash. Okay, moving on to the next question, which is asked by this is how you pronounce pilot error plus ATC error. ATC never asked why aircraft tried belly landing in the first attempt, even though they saw it from the tower. Why ATC allowed them to continue 3000 feet for go around? Well, yes, this is a very important question, and let me start with this, that ADC are also at least PPL rated pilot. They also know a lot about flying, and frankly speaking, they can be called an aviation police, as they have the right to override pilots' requests, and especially those requests that are wrongly insisted by pilots, as we saw in the case of PK-8303. Until the emergency occurs, then ATC is bound to listen to the pilot's request and make it possible and do as much to insist the pilots in their emergency. In the case of Flight PK-8303, the ATC has the right to ignore the pilot's request and had told them that their request is denied. Please go around. If they were in any other country, ATC must have given them a go around call, as it's an approach controller duty to keep the separation and safely land the aircraft on the runway. And if he feels that the aircraft is too high and not following the procedure and it could jeopardize the safety of the aircrafts waiting on the short final, then yes, he can and he should. And yeah, another question he asked, that when they saw them doing belly landing, then why he didn't deploy any fire trucks and didn't initiate other safety protocols. Yes, that is also a big question which I seriously have no answer to it. I don't know what he was thinking and why he didn't do such. This is something where they should investigate, and I also couldn't find any of his statement in the report came out by PCAA. Plus, once the go around is initiated by pilots, ATC controller asked pilots what was the reason for their go around, but nothing was asked regarding a go around. Okay, moving on to the next question. Fasi Rahman, Ahmed Khan, Monis Iftikhar, and Solar Energy all asked the same question that are linked together. Everyone asking the same question, that ADC role is missing. Before the pilots said they were comfortable, were they struggling with any technical issue before they said they were comfortable now? Where is the extended audio clip? So I'll try to answer this, as they all are linked to each other. According to the statement of ATC controller released by PCAA, predicts that the ATC in fact told pilots 3 times, but they said that they are comfortable. And also the missing audio could be this statement, that ATC had been telling pilots that they are very high, but they kept insisting ATC that they are comfortable, and I can't think of anything else at this point. Only the FDR and CVR can confirm whether the pilots had any emergency before coming down to runway 25 left and somehow hidden that from ATC. That could be the reason of being hot and high and coming down very steeply, and that's why they didn't initiate a go around. But the chances of hiding such information from ATC is very rare. Yes, probably such emergency that does not jeopardize the safety of aircraft can be hidden, but a real emergency always end up with a pan or mayday call. And yes, the pilot did not make a passenger announcement saying that they are doing belly landing. If they had, then I agree here with Kudi07 that there is a 10 minutes of scary demo in every flight of emergency landing. And according to the survivor as well, he said it was a normal landing, and pilot announces normally that they are landing to Karachi airport. That being said, I strongly believe that there wasn't any technical related issue, but rather a series of bad decisions of continuing the approach despite being reminded by the ATC and the CRC in the cockpit and still proceeding with the approach. It's a straight no in my dictionary if that is the case.
So ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the next question. And before I move on to the next question, I want to apologize from you for being a very comprehensive over here on this topic. The very comprehensive Q&A you have seen it so far. I'm just making is just because I believe that the information out there on YouTube is not sufficient. So I had to make it very interactive. And yeah, I'm not doing this for views. If I were, then I would be making entertainment videos, which I usually make on my channel. My previous video, the comprehensive speculation on Flight PK-8303, which I made, was not monetized. And yeah, by the way, thank you so much for liking that video and leaving appreciative comments over there. It means a lot. But still, I don't make such videos, but as I am from aviation background and a lot of you were asking questions and were requesting to make a follow-up video, which I made earlier, so that's why on that I'm making this video. So let's move on to the next question, which is asked by Amir Ashfaq. He said that pilots should have assisted the aircraft and should have asked for emergency landing before and should have taken short return back to 25 left. Yes, this is a very important question over here. I think he means to say, and most viewers asking why not landing on the reciprocal runway, which is the runway 07 right. Well, according to Captain Gary Grewal, he is also an instructor and a pilot on Airbus A320, and I have been very fortunate enough to talk about this with him, that why he didn't initiate a 180-degree turn and landed back to runway 07 right. He said in his statement that the crew could have executed a 180-degree turn to land on the runway 07. This procedure is really practiced today and in the last 15 years. I have never seen any instructor or airline teaching its use, but I have been in aviation since 1969 and its practice in simulator was common in the 1980s till early 2000s. If you haven't practiced or thought about the maneuvers in training, it's not going to occur to the pilot under the stress of this kind of situation. So I don't expect pilots to be able to consider it under the circumstances. So moving on to the next very important question asked by Sess. So normally every airport in the world have cameras covering every inch of the airport. Yet in Pakistan, Karachi, they haven't got a single camera covering the runway and landing approaches. Amir Ashfaq says the same, no CCTV camera on the runway. And another question is asking the same, why no cameras are installed at nearby runway airports? Well, this is a very interesting question, and yes, majority of airports are equipped with the runway cameras and other security cams at different angle. I don't know whether they have it or not, but most probably they may have. Now the question arises, if they have, then why not releasing the footage to the public? Yet this is another mystery which is surrounded by probability and possibilities, but have no solid evidence whatsoever. And if there was any camera, then some of my viewers commented that if a house can have such security cam up and running and can release the video within 1 hour, then how come an airport don't have such facility, as it could have given us a lot of answers? Well, I don't want to comment on this much because I don't have any info yet, and the authorities also didn't comment on such, so it's better that we move on to the next question and let authorities answer that later on. Okay, Amir Ashfaq again ask how that can be possible that no witness to first landing where aircraft bounced 3 times. The report must be made public so that other pilots can take suggestions from the report, whether they are Pakistani, Indians or Americans or anywhere in the world. Crash reports of anywhere must be made public. Well, there must be a witness and some airport personnel must have seen that as well, but their statements are not recorded and also not depicted in the official report without solid evidence. However, you can only listen to such statements of witnesses on national television news, but they are far from realities, as you never know whether they are telling the truth or not. Some witnesses are just there to put shan masala into the already messed up situations. Back to the questions.
Well, Nada Raja and Robert Dininger, they asked a similar question that can be linked together. Well, the pilot should not have extended the landing gears soon on the second landing attempt. They dragged the plane and crashed the plane. Again, Robert Dininger says, is there a captain of this plane type who can tell us if the landing gear extending over the populated area has brought too much drag for the last 200 meter? So extending the landing gear in the last second over the runway could be a better way. What the handbook says. Well, yes, yes. Bear with me as it's going to be a long answer. You have bared enough, just few minutes more, please, as people have a lot of confusions on this one, which needs to be addressed in a right way. Well, let's start. When aircraft landing gear extends, it creates enormous amount of parasite drag, where now you may ask, is there anything to minimize this? Well, yes, in general aviation, where the aircraft landing gear are not retractable, as mostly they are used for short distances and mostly for training purposes like Cessna 172, in that aircraft there is a wheel sleeves, also called wheel pants, that limits the drag to its minimum but does not eliminate completely. The thing about the wheel is that they aren't aerodynamic and they can be shaped as aerodynamic, as their purpose is to bear weight and to spin right when they touch down. That makes sense, right? So the larger the aircraft, the bigger the landing gear, and hence more parasite drag. Now you would ask why airliners don't have these wheel sleeves. Well, airliners mostly fly in its cruise phase. As soon they take off, the landing gear retracts to its undercarriage and does not create any parasite drag. And at the final moment when the aircraft is approaching the runway, they lower the landing gear and the drag increases significantly. Look at the video and increase the volume and notice the sound the landing gear creates as soon the pilot lowers the landing gear. So the sound which you have just heard is the sound of relative wind striking the landing gear and getting turbulent and creating buffeting effect. And also, who must have flown in an aircraft, they must have experienced that at some point during landing, it feels like an aircraft is deaccelerating, feels like a break in the air. This is the time where probably landing gear is being extended. The larger and bigger the landing gear, the more it is exposed to the oncoming air and hence creating a drag. But manufacturers don't make the landing gear such aerodynamic cause there is no need of that, as they are deployed and retracted for a very short period of time. During takeoff and landing and during normal flight, the engines have more than enough power to counter that drag. Designing something that minimizes the drag will bring more weight to the aircraft, and that will do more harm than good. Well, at this point, I like the statement of Gary Graywall that he says they could, however, have glided further without gear extension on final approach and maybe made it to the airport boundary for a belly landing. The ATC can be heard asking them if they intend to carry it out. That having been missed is a huge blunder which could have saved all lives. So I believe that if he had not lowered the landing gear, perhaps he could have made it to the runway. If not, then at least he would have passed the populated area and landed somewhere short of runway 25 left, as the Airbus has excellent glide ratio of 17:1, which means 17 unit of distance forward and 1 unit of distance downward. But that's where all assumptions come into play. Let's move on to the next question. Well, before that, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, then kindly subscribe and give it a like. It really helps. So moving on to the next question, SK Shakiba. She asked that, can you tell me at what time the pilots lower the landing gear and at what height? Well, most probably around 2000 feet and 5 to 8 nautical miles away from the runway threshold. This slows the aircraft and allows pilots to trim the aircraft for the gear down position and also set the thrust position and get stabilized on that configuration. honestly, there is no magic number on when a pilot would call for a landing gear, but as soon the speed is at or below the VSO speed limit and height is appropriate and the aircraft captures glide path, then yes, pilot can lower the landing gear at any time whenever he feels like. And there is also a V card in the cockpit to let pilot knows at what speed the flaps and landing gear can be extended and retracted. If pilot still violates and does not follow, then I don't know what to say on that. Well, a lot of questions have been asked regarding that pilots were fasting, that they were tired, this would have in turns made their decisions cloudy. Well, yes, that could be the factor involved as well. But we all are different, our bodies react differently, and we should not forget that there were two pilots. If one makes a false judgment, that other can correct it. Both pilots cannot be going through the same circumstances, but it was a rather a seniority barrier that before I speak on this, I would like you to watch this small cutout footage of Flight 812 coming from Dubai to Bangalore.
Boeing 737 was descending 2 times faster than the normal descent.
Think brake. Think brake. Think brake. Think brake.
Despite the calls from the first officer to go around and a number of warnings from ground proximity warning system, the aircraft touched down, leaving 5,200 feet of the runway behind.
Well, same scenario. The pilot was high in approach and was a bit tired. During the flight, he could be heard sleeping, and upon final approach, while he was coming hot and high, first officer told the captain to go around. Not once, but twice. But captain landed at high speed and half the runway was consumed, which resulted in an overshooting the runway. And at the end of the runway, there is a cliff where the aircraft couldn't stop and fallen down from the cliff. All passengers and crew died of just one big mistake, and that is ego. Not taking instructions from the less experienced first officer and captain trying to prove that he is doing right, and in that cause the results were catastrophic. The fasting don't crash a plane. It's the ego and stubbornness that crashes a plane. So this is why the pilots have to go through a lot of training, including the MCC, which is called multi-crew corporations, where they are assigned to do their duties and how to manage, and most importantly how to cooperate. But despite of all this, it still happens. The cause, it's still there, waiting for the right time and for the right moment. And when captain and first officer are not on one page, disaster strikes, and eventually it's the passenger who pays the price. Let's move on to the next question. So, Kamal Lalchandni and Jennifer Santos, and yeah, by the way, Jennifer Santos, I didn't forget, shout out to you and all your fellow Filipino nurses working in frontline in the UK. Hats off to you all and the medical personnel helping out in the pandemic of COVID-19. You all stay safe. So yeah, this is very important. Every question is very important in this video, huh? Every question. So yeah, okay, here it goes. I think pilot forgot to open the landing gear. Jennifer Santos says that as I watched this video, it is very clear that it's a pilot error. He forgot the landing gear, causing damages to both engines on touchdown. Well, not exactly, as it's very rare among Airbus pilots to forget, as an aircraft coming in for a landing, and if it's in landing configuration like the flaps are deployed and the speed is slow, then the aircraft GPWS, the ground proximity warning system, will give chime right about at 700 feet, and when you are about 500 to 300 feet to touchdown and pilots still don't deploy, then it will give you audible warning of too low gear, as depicted in this video.
Too low gear.
Let me show you another video of FedEx MD-1010F is coming in for a landing, and judging by the clip, the pilots forgot to lower the landing gear at around 500 feet or less. The chime or audible warning may have come up in the cockpit, which in turns reminds the pilot to lower the landing gear, and hence they did and landed safely, where the plane spotters on the ground be like, hey, we are getting some good footage today, and GPWS in the cockpit be like, haha, not today. Curse you, GPWS. Oh, well, that's very lame of me. Let's move on to the next question. Aisha Khan, yes, one of the awesome subscriber of my channel. Aisha Khan asked that thanks, Captain, but the pilot was on a suicidal mission. No. Wait a second. Nah, that is Miss Aisha. Not really. This is the reason I made this video and this previous video as well, to clear the concept of people. A lot of misleading content is out there on YouTube and even on national media. The answer of this question is a big fat no. Well, if he wanted to do suicide, he had a lot of attempts to do so. He could have crashed the plane in Lahore rather than flying all the way to Karachi. And if he wanted to crash in Karachi, he wouldn't have gone for the runway. Instead, he would have crashed a lot earlier with full force in the Malir area, and that would have caused a lot of damage and casualties. So no, it is not a suicide but a series of bad decisions. But still, we even can't say this right now because we don't have the official report. But one thing I'm certain about, and I can give you guarantee on that it wasn't a suicide. I hope that answers the question.
So Satish Shah asked that do Pakistani people are smart enough to understand your video? Brother, what it has to do with Pakistanis, considering the fact the one who made the video is himself a Pakistani? You have to change this, man. It has nothing to do with the nation. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Pakistanis are very, mashallah, broad-minded people and very educated. You can't go wrong with Pakistani. So we're gonna skip this question and not gonna comment on this much because you know what you doing, huh?
So moving on to the next question, Monis Iftikhar. Yes sir, and the role of ATC is completely missing, which I have answered this question before, as it is limited recording. Now question is, what's ding ding in the first attempt? Few question. Okay, so yeah, new theories are arising recently. According to the new theory, the hot and high and the chime is not only the landing gear, it can be flaps as well. When a pilot is coming down fast and its speed is not under VFE, which is the flap extend velocity, then the aircraft computer will not allow the flaps to extend, as it could break or possibly damage the structure of the aircraft. So as soon the pilots extend the flaps and the speed of the aircraft is above VFE, then the chime would occur.
Too low, flaps.
And the pilot will be forced to land at high speed. Either he slows the speed and let the computer allow the flaps to extend. If not, then the flaps will not be extended and the pilots will be landing at very high speeds. Take a look at the footage of Southwest 737-700 doing an emergency landing at LAX without flaps due to flaps unoperational. Notice the speed of the aircraft.
Yeah, we are coming in fast. Yeah. That's how you put down a 737 with no flaps.
So you can see the aircraft was coming very fast, as this is what it is. Flaps are a high lace used to reduce the stall speed of the aircraft and allow the pilots to land the aircraft at slower speed, and also allow pilots to lower their angle of descent. Without flaps, pilots will be forced to land the aircraft at such high speeds. So yeah, the ding ding could be either the VLO speed is higher or the VFE is higher, something which was not allowing the pilots to operate on such speed. What was that? I can't answer this precisely. Only the official report would. Well, that's it. That concludes this video. Still, there are a ton of questions that needs to be answered, but at this point I can't answer this in a single video, and it would take a lot of time. This is the final video of Flight PK-8303 follow-up. I will not be making more videos on this again. And before I leave, I want to answer one question for which I have been criticized a lot. That is, why you called pilots heroic? Well, let me be the first one to say, yes, I agree with you that were all you said. I might be wrong to say heroic, and therefore I have been very criticized a lot for that. A lot. But guys, let me make a point here, if you agree with me. At the end, we are humans. We make mistakes. Some are those where we get away with nothing, and some are those that end up in a catastrophic, just like an ill-fated Flight PK-8303. Yes, he made countless mistakes based on the data available, and he should have gone around. But this is not the first time it happened. It happened with the Flight 812 as well, which you saw in the video as well. Same scenario. Seems like it is becoming more and more practical maneuver amongst pilots. But the bad thing about life is that it is very unforgiving to such mistakes. You are very lucky if you get away with such. That what we call miracle. But if you don't, the results are very life-threatening. Secondly, yes, I agree, and this is what arguably comments among most pilots. That is, if he had made a mistake and the engines did strike with the runway, then he shouldn't have lifted the aircraft back in air. Because guys, let me give you an example. If you are driving a car and if a cat comes ahead of you, what would you do? Would you ram the cat with your car or try to save it? Same happened here. As soon the aircraft touched, his instincts told him to lift, because it wasn't a planned belly landing that he was prepared for, but rather a mistake that he also wasn't even aware of. As soon he touched down on its engine, his self-saving steam activated and he tried to save the aircraft. That's what he did, and that's all sums up. At the end, no one wants to die. No one. The hastiness caused this chaos and a deadly accident. I call him heroic not because his decisions killed everyone, but he tried to save all till the last moment. He tried his best. He flown the aircraft long enough, but as he did make a mistake and the engines giving up on him and all the bells ringing in the cockpit, your judgment simply fails and you cannot innovate any idea, and at the end you collapse. I can understand such human autonomy, as you must have all gone to such phase some time in your life. I agree he made several mistakes. Everyone does, and I even know that those mistakes could easily be overridden. But there is another factor where most of you will not agree with me on this. Being a Muslim, it's our strong belief that life and death is in Allah's hand. This had to happen, and it happened. Jazakallah khairin jaza. This is the end of the video series of PK-8303. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you so much. Kindly subscribe my channel if you like. Thank you all again. This is Captain Fahad. I'm signing off. Take care and Allah Hafiz.